Sunday, July 13th, 2025. Courage. Today we affirm, God within me is the source of my courage. And our message reads, worrisome and challenging events may leave me thinking I don't have the courage to face them. What I'm going through may feel like too much to bear. Then, I remind myself that as a divine being, I have all the courage I could ever need. How I view myself has a strong bearing on how I handle moments of stress. If I tell myself I'm weak or unable to cope, that will probably be my experience. But if I affirm that God within is my power to rise above any worldly situation, I will feel courageous, empowered, and strong. Stressful moments may leave me feeling alone and afraid. With the presence and power of God within me, I realize I am never alone and need not fear. This is the source of my courage. Our Bible verse for today is from Joshua 1:9. I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
That was a good daily word, wasn't it? Courage. The minister that I had in Nashville was a man of color, Jimmy Scott, and he pronounced courage, carriage. So it sounded as though he was talking about a horse and buggy or something when he was talking about it, because he talked about have carriage. Oh yeah, I like carriages. I think they're cute. Anyway, I want to talk today about why have religion? Why even have it? What's the purpose of religion? It is, in my view, the exclamation, or the explanation in the pre-scientific age for natural phenomena and an attempt to influence events. You know, some of the first things that we learn about religion comes from peoples who lived literally thousands of years ago. We've got cultures that are older than the Egyptians. But all of them have within them the same basic ideas. And that is that we are not alone. There is something grander and greater. There is a plan that is being carried out on a cosmic level by someone as opposed to something. I want to focus, though, on the Egyptians because I think they were very unusual. Egypt had within it during the years many, quote, capitals, cities that ruled, or the pharaoh ruled from these cities. It was usually an area where the pharaoh grew up, got his education and so forth. And so we have many different cities who considered themselves the capital. Luxor was one of them. Memphis was one of them. Depending on which group of people along the Nile River, which is really strange because it runs south to north. We don't think of it that way, but it really does. It runs from the south to the north. And the south people were called the Upper Nile region. So that's odd, isn't it? We think of south as the bottom. They thought of it as the top. The lower part is the part that runs into the Mediterranean. They're at the Nile Delta. When there was a pharaoh from Luxor, that city's personal god became the god of the entire region of Egypt. So we have gods with different names all the way through, but the one I want to focus on is the one that came from Memphis. And I'm not talking about the Memphis of Tennessee, of course. I'm talking about the Memphis of Egypt. In that region, the worshiping was done to a particular deity that we don't think a lot about and we don't hear a lot about. Ptah is the way we spell it in English, and the pronunciation is Ptah. Ptah was the god of the Memphis region. Supposedly, in their way of looking at things, Ptah was the originator of all the other gods of all the other cities and regions of Egypt. And by the way, the Egyptians considered everything else inferior to them, and they were the world in their time. That's the way they viewed it. But getting back to Ptah, very, very strange way of looking at things. You know, I've mentioned this before of what I call, I've got a name for it, and it's a process that people do in their minds. They accept an illogical assumption and then carry it out logically. The carrying out of the logic begins with the belief in an illogical assumption. And I call it flogic. That's because I think it is. It's flawed. But, oh, hi, Leon. Good to have you. Good to have you. Good to see you. And I didn't say hi to you, Jody and Zach. Good to see you too. Okay. Back to Ptah. Their view was they tried to answer all the questions you might have. And this is the way they viewed it. Well, Ptah is the strongest and all of gods because he is the first god. He is the first of his kind. And he is the father of all the other gods in all the other regions. So they are all just Ptah's children. So when you think of Isis and Set and all these other gods, you are talking about the children or the children's children of Ptah. So the question is, well, where did Ptah come from? And here's where the flogic starts, right here. Oh, Ptah? Ptah created himself. Huh? How can something that already was have created something? They had a view, and actually they put it in bas-relief, chiseled it into stone, of Ptah creating himself by taking the ejaculation and swallowing it, his own ejaculation. So I know it's gross, isn't it? And to think of this as just a cycle, that's the way they viewed it. Oh, it's just a cycle of creation that starts with creation and continues with creation. Strange way of looking at things, but that's how they carried out this logic. And this went on for thousands of years, through many dynasties, through many peoples, all the way up to the point where the Greeks came in and the Seleucids and came in and stopped all this. And they changed and they put in their pantheon of gods, and that was the view of things. My question is, why have religion? Why at all? I think it starts with ancestral worship. The idea of seeing someone live, mature, become one of the elders, and eventually die. They would save these bones and considered them sacred. They considered the ideas and the teachings of the people who came before them as sacred, very special, and to be continuous. They didn't want this to die, so they continued to carry forth a worship of the sacred within their ancestors. This gave them comfort. This gave them teachings which they could use in their daily lives, and it gave them power. That's the whole purpose of it. That's the whole purpose right there. Comfort, teaching, and power. There were cultural belief systems all over the many different peoples of the world, including those who no longer are even a part of and just maybe just a little bit of DNA is within us from these peoples. The Denisovans, the Neanderthals, all these many, there are more too, but they're all of these different creatures who lived on the earth and they were homo, but not quite homo sapien. They were a little different. Of course, homo sapien means thinking man, and don't kid yourself, these other people could think. They had art, they had religion, they had all these things. Those beautiful things that we're just now discovering or just now allowing ourselves to understand and believe, and allowing these ideas to come into our system. Because there was a closed system in science and in religion for many, many years among all of us and our European ancestors and other ancestors. Religion is used in a simple way to explain natural phenomenon. You know, the Bible is almost like a story told by an elder to a child. Grandpa or Grandma, where did we come from? How did this all get to be? What is going on here? I think that's something if anybody who becomes aware asks themselves. And I say becomes aware because you can be here on this planet and functioning and still be asleep, not be aware. But when you do become, that becomes sort of the first question you ask. What is this and why am I here? Why am I here? Who am I? You know, that was one of the first things that Moses asked the burning bush. When he said, if I'm supposed to go down and speak to the pharaohs and tell the pharaoh to let my people go, who sent me? What's your name? Who are you? And the answer, of course, was very similar to Ptah. I am that I am. Oh, you are the beginning and the end and everything in between, okay? I'll carry that down and tell him and see what he thinks about that. Of course, they laughed until the plagues started coming that predicted in a wonderful, wonderful story about Grandpa, how did we get here? What happened before this? What's going to happen next? One thing of the natural phenomenon also, besides just the how did we get here and stuff that we want to know about, is how do we have weather on this planet? How does weather come along? What does it mean? Who sent it? What's its purpose? And we all know that, as I was explaining to Neil before this, that as a child, I was told when thunder rolled across Oklahoma, and I asked, what was that? What, about 4 years old? I was told, oh, there's a big potato wagon. I just rolled it. It's emptying the potatoes on the roof of the house, and that's what you hear, rumbling down a potato wagon. Even at 4 years old, I knew that's something that you really need to look into there, grown up, because I don't think so. But what it does is it allows many people on this earth to explain things in an unscientific, a pre-scientific world, what certain things are. Lightning flashes, sparks from Thor's hammer, the powerful sounds that come from it, the roaring of the wind, the hard rains that come down. All of this are explained by some celestial being is creating this. That's what it is. And that went on for millennia. And it's just amazing that nothing changed in those kind of beliefs. And why? Because it was almost sacrosanct to view any of these things as less than religious. You had to go to stop and try to measure things and figure them out was considered sinful, something that just shouldn't be done, and it was banned in many cultures. Don't look inside the human body and try to figure out how it works. Don't tear up anything and try to figure out what it's coming from. Just allow it to be and realize that's not a part of your business. Stay out of that. Don't go looking into the celestial realm and saying that the earth is a planet that circles the sun as opposed to being the center of the world. Where did you hear that? Well, I didn't hear it anywhere. I'm just observing. Well, you better stop that observing. You're in trouble. You're already in trouble. So we saw that sort of thing happen throughout the world for a long, long time. So the weather was just not questioned. What it was a part of a religious act, a part of a divine act going on. Celestial events, same story. Moon cycles, sun cycles, eclipses, explosions in the heavens, stars exploding. All of this that was observed was considered something happening in a realm beyond the physical. Seasons. Seasons were placed for bearing crops, planting crops, when to plant, when to harvest, all controlled and set in motion by deities. Ocean tides, same thing, created magically for a reason that only the God, be its name Yahweh, Ptah, whatever. By the way, Yahweh is not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. I listened to a scholar of the Bible named Dan McClellan. I don't know if any of you ever heard of him. You might be able to look him up and find out about his background and what he believes. He says things because he knows the Bible really well. He can sit and just talk about it for hours and hours if you let him. He remembers dates. He remembers where people came from. He remembers the author that he's reading, at what point in time the book or the epistle or whatever it might be is written. And one statement he makes that's a real shocker is, there is no place in the Bible that says there is only one God. Yeah, it's true if you think about it. Even in the Ten Commandments, it says, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods, plural, before me. Now that does mean that you shall have no other beliefs of any of the other cultures around you or that you come in contact with. You stay with this idea. He goes even further to celebrate the idea that if you want to call God something, Yahweh is not a correct name to call him because it's not even a real name. It was something that was just made up from the letters YHWH. And it's meaningless. He calls God El Adonai, which means the highest God. The highest God. Well, just do the math, do the logic. If there's a higher God, then that means there are lower gods. And that's his view. And that's why he expresses the idea that in religious terms, we should see that there is no such thing as one God expressed anywhere in the Bible. He goes on to talk about how Jesus became God through history and so forth, but and how that was just something made up. Okay, when to plant, ocean tides, storms. Storms we talked about, droughts. Droughts we know about from the Bible. It says that there were droughts, and these droughts were caused by God. God is responsible for everything in the Old Testament. There is no anything outside of God. There is only an expression of the God, the sky God, El Adonai. Floods. Boy, that's a biggie. Almost every one of the cultures in the world has a flood story. To the point that some scholars are now saying, hey, maybe these are all related. Maybe they're all related to one event. And they're starting to see this event as what's called the Younger Dryad, a time when the earth was hit by a comet and suddenly, there was a change in the atmosphere which caused all the ice to melt at once, and uprose all the sea levels and oceans and seas and rivers and everything, and captured most of the people on the planet unawares. When this sort of thing happens, what are you going to do? You're going to start over. And that was the point for all of them. The survivors started over. Then there comes the idea for each and every one of us singularly. And that is the idea of illness and healing. When the ancients became ill, they blamed it on something outside of themselves causing this, and they saw it as a symptom inside their own bodies represented by their actions. They were angering some god, or they were becoming the victim of some evil spirit which existed within them. And so they had people come in to wherever the person was that was sick and cast out the demons that were inside them. That was their belief. That's the way they viewed things. It was only in science later that we started studying the body in a way that we could say, oh, this is how the endocrinal works. That's how that all comes together in that system. Oh, this is how the breathing system works. Oh, this is how the system for carrying the blood throughout the body works, and the purpose of it, and the value of each one of these things. They didn't view things that way. Even in our supposedly enlightened time, there still were barbers. And barbers with their red and white poles were the people who bled people. Because the idea was, as well, the sickness is in the blood. Blood carries life. So if we bleed out this person from the sick, weak blood and allow them to rest and recover and recuperate, they will they will develop within themselves a way to bring this blood up, and it will be healthy, and they will recover, maybe, if we don't bleed them too deeply and they die from lack of blood in their system. And that happened to many, many times, many people, many, many times. You know, even Charles Fillmore, when he had a broken leg from an accident that he had, it was a sledding accident. He couldn't get it healed properly, so they did everything they could think of, including bleeding him, to get him to get his leg to heal. None of it worked whatsoever. That leg atrophied and was about 6 to 8 inches shorter than the other leg. By using his mental powers of connecting with God, this was able to be changed. So one of the things that I want to talk about right now is that in this importance of life, in this importance of understanding the natural symptoms or the natural occurrences that go on, what we're looking at is a way to explain life itself, birth itself, and death itself. Things that were mysteries all along. Difficult to understand and difficult to explain. The ancestors taught, and this went on for a long, long time, in this attempt to influence events in life by, as Rocco Errico says, Reverend Rocco Errico of Unity says, he wrote a book called Setting a Trap for God. And he called this our idea, or the ancient idea, of prayer. Setting a trap for God. In other words, attempting to influence in the outer something that was happening as an event right here, right now with each and one of us. But you know, many, many religions and many, many cultures believe this. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. This went on for millennia as well. Thousands and thousands of years, cultures rising and falling, wars constantly, ways to influence people through physical power. This went on for a long time. And fortunately, this no longer happens. No, it's still happening to this very day. Still happening to some degree. Maybe not quite as strongly as it once did or quite as brutally, but in many places, spots on this planet, it still is brutal, thoughtless, cowardly, and a way to rule over other people. I like to just call it plain evil, turning away from God. Then comes the idea that the Mayans had and other cultures, including the cultures surrounding us, the idea of a sacrifice of life for a life. The idea being that if setting a trap for God, if I give you this, I would expect you to give me this in return. I'm looking for a great crop and I'm looking for a way to defeat my enemies. And the way that I can do this is I will sacrifice to you something very important to me, and in return, you will do my bidding, God. you will do my bidding. And so here is the sacrificial lamb. Here is the sacrificial goat. Here is the sacrificial person. Amazing that people could go that far. I will give you the precious life of this person. In return, you will give and grant me my bidding. Prayer. Old-fashioned way of praying. And also the idea of ritual. Following out certain rites and this ritual existence would get into people's minds and hearts and mesmerize them into believing this is right. This is the way it should be. This is the way that we continue on. And without these rituals, we will not survive. Then along in history comes a certain guy, just an itinerant preacher from somewhere in the Middle East, who has a different view of how life should be viewed and how life it should be handled. You know, there's even a statement in the Bible where Jesus, that's who I'm talking about, of course, Jesus goes up on a side of a mountain or near a lake, and he gives a long, beautiful speech, a sermon. And this sermon tries to connect people back to what's real. He says to you, you've been taught an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, love your enemies. Treat them with kindness. A lot of people would say, what? How can you do that? I hate them. Ah, that's the center of what's wrong. What's making things ill, not going on well in the world. Hate. View of seeing some people as the other. Not connecting any longer. And you know, that's what religion comes from the Latin religio. Re meaning over or again. Ligio, to connect, just like your ligaments. Religio, reconnecting. Reconnecting with what? With what is true. With what is peaceful in your life. With what will make you whole again. An eye for an eye will not make you whole again. He who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. You know, I was taught also in a part of the lessons that we learned dealing with other people was any time that you punish someone, let's say a child, what you'll get from them deep inside their heart and mind is the idea to avenge that hurt. We all carry it within us. The idea that punishment leads to vengeance. You want to hurt me? Well, by golly, I'll get you back. Those kind of ideas just perpetuate themselves. It's a constant circle that must be broken. And that's what that itinerant preacher came to do. He had a different way of viewing life, one that was radical for his time and still is in our time. Not listened to very carefully, which is to stop seeing anything or anyone as an other. And the idea that he mentions, which is love God with all your heart, mind, soul. In other words, keep yourself in a higher spiritual reality. And love your neighbor as you would have your neighbor love you. Or love your neighbor as yourself. If you love yourself, love your neighbor. But many people do not love themselves. They carry on within themselves the idea that they're not good enough, they don't deserve anything, And what they get in return out of life is exactly what they are thinking and feeling. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. You see, unity is very important in trying to follow the teachings of Jesus, not the teachings about Jesus. That's very important to remember. When you are thinking within yourself, praying, meditating, being still, being cut off in traffic, getting the finger shot at you, or whatever ugly thing could happen in your life, rather than retaliate, simply bless them. Bless them. Release them. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They're not awake yet. So it's up to us to awaken. It's not up to us to force the eyes of someone else open or slap them across the face and say, wake up. It's not important. It's ours to remain awake and to bless and love all that we see on earth and see it all as oneness. That's what true religion is. That's how we come to be who we are meant to be. God bless.